Welcome back to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wilder. So, when they try to bring back the mask mandates right away, I hope everyone remembers and realizes that we've been really fooled before. It's the kind of anxiety-inducing news that most parents hope to never have to hear. After tens of thousands of Quebec teens and preteens were made to wear a new type of COVID-19 mask, all last winter, Health Canada suddenly declared the mask might be toxic. Big surprise. Now the masks, easily identifiable because of their unusual gray and blue color combination. They were recalled back in late March. Now they're coated in a substance called graphene oxide that's linked to lung cancer and lung disease and now banned in Canada, at least temporarily. But for months, they were distributed. And they weren't distributed just a couple, 10,000, 20,000. Yeah, we're talking in the millions. Not just to adults, but minors across Canada. Though the majority were used in Quebec, according to Health Canada, which prove it. Now the question for many Quebec parents, not to mention teachers, daycare workers, transit workers, and others who wore them, is, well, how are they approved to be imported in the first place? Great question, isn't it? Now, the answer is they weren't approved, at least not completely. CTV has learned that through a misstep on the supply chain, along with the emergency order to facilitate COVID-19 related supplies, the masks, well, they were subject to very, very little oversight. Big surprise there, too. Yeah. While Health Canada had in principle authorized the use of graphene masks, it didn't realize they had actually been imported into Canada until a citizen, a Montreal mother, worried about her son's school, and she emailed them. Now, no one else involved seems to have looked up the troubling studies on graphene. So she did. She says, "For me, it was very easy. It was a question, like, I've never heard of graphene, so what is graphene?" said Elaine Moody, the mother who raised the alarm. "Well," she said, "I'm sort of surprised that wasn't something that came to mind when somebody ordered millions of them." Good point. Now, used by teens, preteens all across Montreal and Canada, the graphene masks were first described as, well, not pediatric by the Quebec government during the recall. Now, I think every province kind of said the exact same thing, which is true. They're not child-sized. But in total, Quebec's government spent $30 million to buy and distribute about 30 million masks, including starting back in January, where almost 5 million went out to the province's schools. A provincial order decrees that students in high school, which in Quebec begins in grade 7, must wear masks full-time at school during that time frame. They may not bring masks from home, it said. For almost 3 months, well, students and teachers at several boards, they were required to wear the graphene masks, including in gym class, which boggles my brain just like it does yours. So far, CTV has confirmed 6 school boards and service centers that were distributing them, all supplied by the Board of Education through Quebec Central Acquisition Center. I'll put the list up. You can take a look at all the different schools that were involved, and there were a lot. Now, the English Montreal School Board said it never used the masks. Most parents who have contacted CTV have seen no symptoms in their kids, but one father from Ormstown said just the uncertainty is hard. He keeps monitoring his 2 children for any kind of health problems, and he's also saying that he's not likely to stop anytime soon. I don't think I'll ever feel completely reassured, said Ian Godfrey. If something comes down the road in 10 years, are you going to go back and think it's because of the masks? Most people aren't. Now, 2 parents told CTV that their kids did have some health problems this past winter, including nosebleeds, which just so happens to be a situation of my daughter's. But it's far too soon to know if there's a link or whether the masks will create any long-term problems at all. Worrying studies with few details. Graphene oxide, which coats the masks, is made up of a single layer of tiny carbon nanoparticles packed closely together, supposedly acting as a filter. Supposedly. However, nanoparticles can pose serious risk to the lungs if inhaled, especially if the particles are small enough and breathed in over a very long period of time, which, well, that's exactly what happened to our kids. While nanotechnology is new, this can also happen in nature when, for example, people breathe in nanoparticles from wildfires, said the expert, Dr. Richard Ho. Now, young children's lungs, as well as seniors' lungs, are especially vulnerable. While young and middle-aged adult bodies can generally do a good job clearing out inhaled particles, it's unclear how teenagers fit into the whole mix. A 2013 study on mice found that early signs that inhaled nanoform graphene can lead to lung disease, including chronic pulmonary fibrosis, and warned there may be a long-term risk of cancer and mutations if the particles settle deep into the lung tissue. Sounds concerning. Well, Health Canada said its preliminary research shows that inhaled graphene particles had some potential to cause early lung toxicity in animals. However, this is where they get smart, huh? There isn't nearly enough information to conclude these particular masks will be dangerous in the long term to kids who wore them. So we just go ahead and accept it anyway, right? That's the way we Canadians operate, at least at Health Canada level. Health Canada said in a statement that the health risk to people of any age is not clear. So why in the hell are we wearing them? It's studying the mask specifications, including how small the particles are and how easily they can be detached and breathed in. The details of the mask's design may also matter a great deal in determining the risk, the report said. Health Canada is still performing a scientific assessment to look at, for example, better characterizing particle sizes, manufacturing process, potential for particle release even. Now that came from a statement from the agency. It's also looking at how effective they are as a filter. So they don't even know, but they're going to put it on our kids. Call it a day. Everything's okay. You know where they were made? We'll get to that. In the meantime, it asks people who do not have the symptoms to see their doctors. Oh, perfect. I'm sure the doctors are right on track with that. Canadians who have used these masks have health concerns, such as new or unexplained shortnesses of breath, discomfort, difficulty breathing. They should consult their health care provider, said the agency. I get mad just thinking about this crap. Citizen sleuthing led to discovery. That's right. After a supply chain misstep, Health Canada told CTV it wasn't aware for some time that the graphene masks had even been imported into Canada. No. What's it us? We don't do that. We check everything. No, not Health Canada this time around. The earliest use of the masks that CTV is aware of was around August of 2020 when transit maintenance workers in Montreal began wearing them on the job. But Health Canada only began looking into them in late January of 2021, when Moody, a mother of two, did some detective work and sent the agency that email. She says, "I noticed while walking in my neighborhood right before my son went back to school after Christmas holidays that the boy was wearing a mask that had a gray lining on it," said the mom. So the gray lining, what is that about? Well, she had been researching various kinds of masks, but for an unrelated reason. As part of an environmental group, she had been putting together a petition to the province to allow for school children, of course, to wear reusable cloth masks instead of disposable ones. So she was all on board with the mask thing. "I'd never seen a mask like that in any of my research," she said. So, more questions, and sure enough, she quickly learned that it was, well, the same mask her son Leo was asked to wear at school. Moody, a researcher at McGill University, didn't want her neighborhood or her son's school mentioned in fear that, well, being identified would cause trouble, saying the school also did nothing wrong. Curious, she asked her son to take a picture of the mask at school. He sent her a photo with the box and even the serial number. The label clearly referred to biomass graphene, so she Googled the substance and the Chinese company that produced the masks, called Shengquan Group. There was nothing hidden there, she said. They were really sort of advertising that promoting this mask around the idea that it had, well, this nanoform graphene material in it. Well, she became worried about whether it was safe or not, saying my son was wearing that mask every day, including gym class. After doing some research, she says, 5 days a week, 6 to 7 hours a day, including while running around and exercising. So it works out to a lot of hours, a lot of time spent in that mask. Moody gave Health Canada kudos for snapping to attention. I don't know why. She had also written to some other authorities, but got absolutely no responses, she said, though she didn't want to name them. Why not? Who are you protecting? She exchanged a few emails with the agency, heard some brief updates, and then heard on March 26th about the nationwide recall. Boy, that must have just been enough to satisfy old Moody. There are 2 models of masks that have been named by serial number, but overall graphene masks manufactured by Shandong Shengquan New Materials Company Limited and imported by 4 Canadian establishments are being recalled at Health Canada's direction. So, you called them back. You recalled them. Harm's already done. Damage is already done. I've got to say, lawsuit. What went wrong? Well, it's unclear how much the pandemic emergency created a loophole that allowed the masks in. What is clear is that at least one basic step wasn't followed during a critical period. No, there were several basic steps that weren't followed during a critical period. Many, from the top down. Under an interim order to allow COVID supplies, Health Canada had authorized 3 distributors to import graphene masks from Shandong Shengquan New Materials Company, the agency also told CTV. In normal pre-pandemic times, however, it's not clear that the masks would have even gotten scrutiny. Masks are still considered Class 1 medical devices, meaning they carry generally low risk. Except for these ones, and are not subject to pre-market review. Why not? This includes graphene masks. Now, they're in the Class 1 health category. The manufacturers are responsible for making sure their products are safe and, of course, effective. However, under the COVID-19 interim order for distributors, Health Canada also built in a special accountability measure. It required suppliers to notify it of incoming shipments at least 5 days in advance. Now, this is where things get dicey. With a flurry of products arriving in huge quantities, that rule was meant to keep us informed, said Health Canada spokesperson Jeffrey Legault. But it didn't, did it? With it, we were aware of what's coming, he said, and can be informed and catch and take action if needed. So why didn't you? In this case, Health Canada never got any notification that the graphene mask shipments were on the way, he said. You should be checking them all anyway, period. Prior to importation, holders are required to notify Health Canada of any incoming shipments, said in a statement emailed by the agency. But, obviously, didn't get done. Health Canada was not notified of any shipments by the importers authorized through this exceptional importation pathway. Now, after getting Moody's email, Health Canada began its, research and revoked suppliers' authorizations to import the masks in February, it said. At least a month before it's sent out, a national warning about the ones already in circulation. Take your time, it's okay, it's just the kids. It didn't explain the delay, of course. It was a wild west of COVID masks back then. Health Canada named 2 distributors who imported the masks, Quebec, Metaflifer, and a numbered company that doesn't show up in records of Quebec's government acquisitions. Interesting. I wonder how that could be possible. We might get to that yet, too. Metalifer told CTV that the masks it supplied met all the acceptable standards and referred other questions to Health Canada, of course. Plausible deniability, pass the buck whenever I can. When asked about the alleged failure to send notification of its shipments, it repeated that it is fully cooperating with Health Canada and referred questions back to the agency. Like I said, just keep passing that buck. That's what they've been doing all the way along. For another Montreal distributor, however, the Shangquan masks raised some red flags. Some testing looked a little fishy to me, said Peter Forlini of the company Universal Safety. We did our due diligence, and we passed it, of course. CTV found that in some of its materials, Shangquan Group wrote that its graphene masks had passed the United States FDA certification. But there's a problem with that, too. It's not exactly true, though. The FDA told CTV that there's absolutely no such thing as FDA certification. In fact, they had to send letters to several mask manufacturers telling them to stop making such claims, said FDA spokesperson Audra Harrison. Well, the FDA hasn't authorized any graphene-coated masks and is unaware of any face masks with graphene being legally marketed or distributed in the U.S. at this time, she wrote. But they were. They probably still are. In the U.S., any devices that include drugs, biologics, or additives such as graphene require FDA-specific review and marketing authorization, she said. Now, that also applies to any devices that have antimicrobial or antiviral purposes. Forlini, the other Montreal supplier, said that in the first months of the pandemic, people were desperate for supplies, and it led to a chaotic, panic time with a huge number of seemingly random random people from every walk of life, both selling and buying masks. So again, no accountability, just going to walk away from that one too. He says this was the period when Quebec signed its $30 million contract for the graphene masks, which, by the way, they're doing the same thing right now for back to school in Quebec. Some people imported masks, just hoping that these people from overseas were giving them what they were buying. And some people were just selling whatever they could to make a quick buck, he said. Bucks were what it was all about. It was really the Wild West. A man from Shengquan, a manufacturer, told CTV in a statement after publication time that the company is cooperating fully with Health Canada and will provide all necessary information about the masks. Now, the spokesperson, who gave his name only as Mike, said the company is disappointed by the recall and stands by its masks' safety. Do you believe that? After hearing what you just heard? Lies, lies, and more lies. For Moody, who blew the whistle on the masks, the brand new material slipped in under the radar. That's my read of the situation, she said. Well, I disagree. They've been trying to push this on us for quite some time. It kind of took advantage of the COVID crisis to slip this new technology in under the radar and make a bunch of money. All about the money, isn't it? Well, back to school is just around the corner. Winter is just around the corner. Flu season is just around the corner. Pay attention. Wake up now. Don't let them mask our kids again. Stand up against any mandates forthcoming. Stand up against any mask wearing. Stand up against the shots. Stand up. You're Canadian. I'm Brad Wilder. This is Wake Up Canada News. Remember, you're the voice. Time to make a count. Do it today. I'll see you soon.